All right, welcome everybody to the design workshop design nuances workshop tonight. I'm just going to do a recording to go over this for those who cannot attend. Um, Nuances are just like what it sounds. What do we do to really make it pop? So what I presented here for you tonight is a document, and as I pull it up here, a couple things to keep in mind when it comes to how we can elevate the workshop. Number one are introductions. Right? That's the first thing. How do we grab attention, make it stick? Where it's the first time we're presenting something or introducing ourselves to a group or any topic, right? And we're coming back. But introductions are such a huge opportunity area. Uh, Outside of that, transitions. How do we set things up so our workshop builds as we go throughout? And then little things around how we ask questions, setting up an exercise, debriefing exercise. So I'm going to show you some templates that can really help organize your thought process as you kind of go forward with this. So with that in mind, workshop nuances. So I wanted to start with the fun one right up front, the introduction. Just how do we really, from a flow perspective, make something pop? And so, and you all have access to this. It's in the micro lessons. There's videos attached to this workbook. So if you're ever interested in that, you can go through that little micro course that I put together and get access to this as well. But otherwise, I will put some of these documents directly into tonight's event. But a well-constructed intro, it should really capture interest and really paint that strong picture of what the intent of the session is all about right up front. And similar to last week, if you listened to our conversation last week, what do people do when we go to presentations or workshops? Everyone starts by introducing who they are and their background. That's boring. Get more creative with it. And this is a flow to kind of help you do that. So right up front, what's your hook? How do you want to gain their interest? There are several ways to go about this. In our field, we tend to talk about experiential exercises. It's great, do it, right? Something to capture their attention. I also put a few things on here. A short story, it's got to be concise, can't be more than a couple minutes, but a short story. One of my favorite stories of all time, whether I'm introducing mindset or it's more towards an introduction. But when I talk about two defensive tackles that I had to assess in the draft, and it kind of got to the point of, who's got a stronger mindset? What are we really doing here? What's the intent of why we care about this stuff? But it's got to be short and concise. So a short story can do that. Thought-provoking question. Sometimes you sit there and a very captivating speaker might have two or three really thought-provoking questions to get your interest and curiosity going right away. As I mentioned, experiential exercise, and then of course data. And what that would look like for us is if maybe we did a survey ahead of time and got some team results, and so we put a data set up front, and then we talk about what that represents. Uh, you still, if you do use data, think about it as a short story though, for an introduction. Keep it concise, 2 to 3 minutes. Capture the attention. Once you do that, then you can now transition. So this is actually in order of how you can kind of think about this if you're new to setting up an intro. But now that I've captured their attention, what's the bottom line here? Why did I just capture your attention? What was the point of that exercise or intro, that hook? And how does that set the tone for the day? Right. So uh, now you got to make this relevant to them. All right, we're here to address this today. This is the goal. Uh, Whether that's directly related to some performance task or just a common challenge to the experience, it needs to be tied into something um, that's relevant to them. And the intent of the training really complements that. If you want to think of it as one and the same, you can. I separate them just because it's a little, just in my mind, that's how it works. But I got them hooked, kind of stating the bottom line up front, just what's the relevance of this topic for the intent of today, right? So what we are actually going to do now they got your attention, stated why why it matters, how it's relevant to you and our work together today. What are you going to walk away with? Let's get tangible, right? So we're going to raise awareness on what factors influence our mindset, or raise awareness of how we have control in our focus, or we're going to create a routine. We're going to practice something. So you just state that up front so they know, okay, here's what we're going to get into logistically. And then this last part, if it's relevant, so if you're new to a group, this is when you introduce yourself as the expert. I've got their attention, stating the intent of the day or the bottom line, what the intent of the training is and what we're going to do. Now you insert yourself within the context of that topic. This is what I've seen after X, Y, and Z years of working on this topic. These are the things I've gone back and forth. And now you start sharing a couple of your experiences in um, areas of expertise related to this topic. Now that you've got your intentions, set the day, really establish yourself as an authority figure, and now you can continue on with the workshop. Just keeps it fresh. If you're working with a group, then obviously, if you're coming back, that last part isn't relevant. That's more of like a first introduction, or if you're doing a keynote speech, something like that. But just keeps it fresh, different, captivating, and on point with what you want to do. That can really elevate it. So that's just a summary of some opportunities within an introduction of a workshop within itself, to just create a higher impact. What we're going to do here, this tackles both how we set up exercises and our transitions. So the first one, we just went over the introduction. Now that you've done an introduction, how do I build on that, right? It's like an amuse-bouche at a restaurant. It's not even an appetizer. Maybe it's an appetizer, but I would call it probably more of an amuse-bouche, right? I captured your attention, got your curiosity going. So how do I now transition into the next level, like a deeper exercise? May not be the primary, depending on time. All this is time constricted, but you're transitioning now into the next activity. How does this build on what we're doing? Uh, and so that's something to always keep in mind, right? So an initial awareness, curiosity and awareness grabber, a little bit deeper awareness trainer, and then the primary exercise. So you can kind of think about it that way as you're going with your transitions. Um, but now when it comes to the actual exercise, so a lot of times after an introduction, you're going to get to some sort of, whether it's a large group discussion, small group discussion, or now an experiential activity, doesn't matter. You got to set it up, right? So how do you want to introduce the activity? Any main points or questions you want to introduce? This is really, really critical in the way in which we ask skills matter. I'm gonna showcase an example that we can all relate to. When we introduce mental skills, most of us have gone to school and have heard the physical, technical, mental introduction for why sports psychology matters. But I'm going to share a couple questions, and you think in your mind which one's more effective. Is mental performance important? Or why do you think mental performance is important? Versus, when is your mindset challenged when you go and compete? What are the situations that challenge your mindset? The way in which we set that up, right? The way we ask a question can really set up an activity. So I'm kind of getting into questioning here as kind of some variances, but don't ask open-ended questions unless you really want an unless you really know what you're going to get or want that. Instead, ask questions in a way to justify why you're there. We all know we have stress during competition, so then ask them directly. What situations cause stress? Within competition over a season, makes it relevant, makes it immediate. So that's something when we're setting up an activity, you can ask questions like that to prime them. The other thing, or to kind of set the tone, the other thing with pre-briefing an activity is to prime them what to expect. right? We are positively trying to manipulate them a little bit, right, to get them going. So you can kind of prime their attention on certain things to pay, or prime them to pay attention to certain things throughout the exercise. That comes in really important whenever I do something mindfulness based because it's so foreign altogether. I do a lot of priming. Um, as you go through this, you may notice your mind wandering. I'm already normalizing it. Some people, there, if I'm sitting them, having them just sit and observe their breath, their mind races. For others, it's empty. It's okay, right? That's all normal. It's just normalizing, experiencing, and set that up. Because then what that does is that sets up the debrief. So now we're transitioning to the debrief, really making clear the main points and takeaways of why we did that. Why is that relevant? So coming back to the two examples, we'll continue with those. That way it stays consistent for this video. But if we're talking about when your mental performances or your mindset is challenged, then I need to tie it back to that, right? So if I set that up, then during the debrief, look, what we just learned from this exercise is that our attention wanders. And if we want to really perform under pressure when our mindset's tested, we have to have a clear focus, right? So now I'm kind of really driving that home. And that's what we did during this exercise. So we need to have a clear focus, and when our mind wanders, we need to know how to bring it back, because that helps us when our mindset is being tested during competition. So you're probably already thinking or conceptualizing here what type of activity this would be. But maybe I did an introduction to highlight the topic, and then this first one was a group conversation or experiential exercise as an awareness builder for now the primary training coming next, right? And then that's where we would either go into pre-performance routine or a resetting routine, really getting concrete skills that I would train, and then they could write it down and put it into a routine, coming back to the transition. So now it crescendos up to the top. So it just kind of increments up. But just even having an opportunity to reflect on this, right? All these documents in here, these are reflection tools. You can practice working through going in your head, to just think about the nuances of a workshop, the introduction, the transitions, and then how I'm setting up and debriefing exercises. And this is just a one pager. So if you're very new to doing group works and you're really nervous, something like this can be really, really handy because you can have your lesson flow on the left side. You can just kind of fill it out. Just key points, right? Keep you on, or excuse me, just summaries. So that way you know what topics are coming up next and exercises. So you're not undercutting yourself. That can happen a lot if you're nervous. You over explain early and then you steal the thunder from the activity when it comes. And then on the right side, just some key reminders, right? If you're really nervous, just the key reminders are if they walk away from your workshop, what are the one or two things you need them to walk away with, right? That can really just kind of give you that anchor. And then notes along the way, right? Maybe you're having a conversation, Q&A dialogue, and someone makes comments. Take notes on that, right? Because anytime, this is the last piece of the nuance here, anytime you can circle back to comments made in the beginning, it just really drives it home. You've been listening, you're paying attention, or it also gives you something up to follow up with. I don't want to jump around too much here, but if you're also doing a workshop or a presentation to attract potential clients, aka coaching clinic, taking notes is really critical because it's a lot stronger follow-up to say, hey, coach, thank you for your comments. Here's a set of resources that I thought would be really helpful because I was thinking about you. And now let's go ahead and set up the meeting to do some business, right? So things to kind of think about with how you're managing the flow and the setup and the debrief of your exercises and workshops. But then it also leads to this. Sometimes it can be hard. Like, how do I know it went well? Um, this is specific to workshops. I wanted to do it at a different angle than just evaluating like a mindset assessment, right? Because we talk a lot about assessments. But let's just reflect on the logistics. Let's help focus our attention too. So if I do a general reflection on how I think it went, what did I think I did well? What were some opportunity areas? That's fine. And then let's get into some of those specifics. So I'm going to do a workshop again. How was my introduction, right? Break it down so it's easier for me to reflect. What based on the specific exercises, right? the questions and the summary points. How was my transitions? It just gives me things more concrete because maybe overall I thought it went well and the exercises went well, but my transitions sucked. That's okay. Then I can work on how I want to do some transitions. So this is just an example of how we can kind of conditions ourselves to reflect on how we deliver a workshop. So then that way it's easier to do it again. So this is just kind of the last thing. And then, a key takeaway. And I don't care if this is with an athlete or with us. I think it's always really important to kind of keep in mind because we get in our head too, right? So what's one thing I want to continue next time, and what's one area I want to improve on? Just continuing to be our own problem solvers as we're going along. So I went through this kind of quick, but as we wrap up for today with this video, I really wanted to talk about the nuances from a perspective of how we're setting up introductions and what that flow can look like to really elevate things for ourselves. Then also how we're transitioning, right, from the intro to maybe the starter activity, to the main activity, to the summary. So that way our workshops can cascade as we're or crescendo as we're going up. And then also how do we reflect on our workshops? Because that can also continue to help us elevate our game as we go along. But this will be available in the drive. I just wanted you to be able to see that. I know this was quick, but hopefully it got the wheels turning on some nuances within designing a workshop that can really help elevate our craft. Have a great day.